Right now, the rule is that if I am traveling abroad if my wife and I, let's say, are traveling abroad at a time when when we have another child, let's say in 2.5 years we have a seventh, hypothetically, right? Not implausible. If we have another child and we're abroad at that time, that child is a Canadian citizen.
When you have another child.
However, if that child is then abroad when they have another child, that next generation, so not in this hypothetical my child, but my grandchild, would not be a citizen. And the principle behind that present legal reality is that if a family has relocated outside of Canada, and they are living outside of Canada, generation after generation after generation, if they are living there, engaging with that particular community, then over time there is, I think, necessarily a kind of diminishment of connection to Canada. We're not talking about someone who has gone to work for a couple of years and then come back, because we're talking about an instance where generation after generation after generation. Again, it's not the children of a Canadian born abroad. It's when the child of a Canadian born abroad then has a child also born abroad. That is the present law. But the Liberals are proposing with Bill C-71 to change that law, to allow without limit Canadian citizenship to be passed to generation after generation after generation. So it means that if one of my children were to move out of the country and then they were to marry someone there, have children, their children had children, for an unlimited number of generations, they could still, provided that they visited Canada at certain points in their life, they could retain that citizenship. It seems unreasonable to me, Mr. Speaker, to us in the Conservative Party, that people should be retaining Canadian citizenship for dozens of generations living away from this place. It doesn't seem obvious to me that someone who is not living here, whose family has not lived here for generations, should have access to the rights that flow from citizenship, because their lives involve engagement with and moral commitments to communities that are elsewhere. And obviously there's nothing wrong with a person making that choice and choosing for whatever reasons to want to live somewhere, but at some point you recognize the reality that you don't, that you are not connected to this place in the same way that someone who lives here is. Someone who is living here, working here, paying taxes here, volunteering in a community here. Now, many Canadian citizens choose to live abroad for periods of time, of course, but it's reasonable to establish some kind of parameters around how long a series of generations would be abroad before you might say, okay, it seems like there's been an opting out of being Canadian and an opting into being somewhere else. So Conservatives are opposed to this proposal from the government for a dramatic expansion of citizenship, such that citizenship could be passed on by those living outside of Canada for an infinite number of generations.